Hello, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Let's play chess. Okay, I have it set to 5 minute blitz, but we're going to move over to rapid game at 10 minutes per side. Okay. Ask for a rematch. Okay. That's fine. Um, I would say that the world has lost more of our top chess players in the last 2 years than you would normally expect. I don't mean to be glib about this, but I'm going to address this issue straight faced. Um, Hort, Grandmaster Hort, Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky, GM Jan Timman, former world chess champion Boris Spassky, and international master Jeremy Silman. And if I might be failing to recall, if you will excuse me, for 2 years to lose that many of the world's very top chess players. Strikes me, just by number, strictly by number. I don't have any much more to say about that right now. I have nothing negative to say about these people. In some cases, I have positive things to say about them, but I'll also keep those to myself. Just food for thought. Okay, so this game seems like it was a little bit inaccurate. 2 blunders and a miss with 5 inaccuracies and 3 mistakes. I'm not sure I want to review this game. We'll give it a light review, so to speak, and comment on anything that pops out as the game just plays over. Some of my efforts early on were to try to focus on c2. The sacrifice of the bishop was deemed a blunder, so it was probably a sacrifice that, if I ever get the same position again, which is unlikely, to go with that. And I was, I have to admit, I was a little bit confused here. I thought bishop f5 was winning outright, but it looks like after a trade of bishops on b3, or after a trade of queens on b3, the second of the 2 skewered pieces moves away from the square that the bishop was attacking, so I don't win the exchange there. That's all. Bishop to f5 is correctly labeled a mistake by Torch 4. Picking up some material. Yeah, move like rook to d8 there was just a long-term move that rook might become useful eventually. It turns out no, I had to reposition him to c8, and then my opponent drops a bishop at the end with and then resigns. So, in short, trading queens here is pretty bad for white because of how many points of material black leads. And they can force a trade of rooks on c1. Or buy rook c1, not necessarily on c1, but on either c1 or most likely otherwise f1. So there's got to be very little counterplay in an endgame where black is ahead by 4 points of material. That, or if the if the queen finds anywhere to which she may escape for the time being, white loses White loses another piece. So it was understood as a respectful resignation. I understood it as a respectful resignation. So now, how long have I been here? 30 minutes. How about we play Gaming 5? Check this game out on another analysis. Another site, leadchess.org. Leadchess.org has an awesome analysis tool as well. So we'll check this game. I want to see how Leadchess feels about the accuracy of the game that just finished. And yeah, so I ported to Leadchess the game itself, rather than the game plus continuation against computer. I think that's a good way to do that. Leadchess considers this game to be quite accurate. Looking at my stats mostly, this is indicating a lot of accuracy from white. And my opponent's stats, a decent amount of accuracy. Now we'll also check. We'll give chess.com the first go because this is where it was made. It's already going. Interesting. Let's check out this game. Turns out in terms of accuracy on Leadchess. Same game with the computer playing against me until I checkmated the combination of human and computer. So, all right, 36. So my opponent played the move rook takes d7, which allows rook takes d8, and then black is going to only be able to recover one of the lost rooks, who will then be captured himself. But We'll go over this in a little bit more detail. This was a fine game in my belief. My opponent played very well. Has nothing to hang his, her, or they head about. And this is the. I'm looking at the window where the game was played out all the way to completion. 96 and 88, probably about the same. 94 and 86. So this kind of makes sense on a number of levels here. Let's see. I'll be reviewing this game in much detail. Let's review. See if can you all see what's going on in this screen? Yes, I have it positioned well enough. Okay, good. And we're gonna go over this game with Lichess's engine commenting for a change of pace. A little bit of an English opening, kind of sidestepped into it. And we have this formation of pawns, black and white, that make up this center diamond. And that's very typical of the English opening, which I've often claimed and continue to, is more of a system than I mean, it is an opening, I know that, right? But it also sometimes plays as a system. White plays certain key moves the same or with options in between, and black responds, and then at some point white kind of looks at the board and says, okay, let's make sense of this. Another thing to note about the English opening, it's here with white to move, but this there will be a hole on d5 and a hole on d4 once black gets his knight in the game. Could be an opportunity for black to plant an aggressive knight on d4 as an outpost, and the same goes for white. One of the challenges of this type of English opening is establishing a claim to advantage for white. It's very symmetric. There's a lot of symmetry in this, in the English opening. There's no doubt about that. Right? I mean, we're mostly looking at symmetry right now. With the move knight to c6, black establishes full symmetry as late as 6 full moves into the game. So we have to be aware of that as white, because we have to be aware of that as both white and black, really. Castles, and now the symmetry comes to a sharp end where black has chosen to castle for king safety, a fine move, and white will initiate a as much of a pawn storm as he can get going, noting that it will be difficult to join the h pawn with the g pawn on this storm because the g4 square is so strongly controlled by black. But the h pawn sometimes is enough to mix things up and around. First of all, it's no longer symmetrical, so there's dynamicism on the board. And second of all, it can be an attacking pawn, and that's great to get your foot in the door, so to speak, if you're going to launch an attack. I can't do these like that. Okay, you're going to launch an attack against your opponent's king. Doesn't want. Okay. So my opponent will develop his piece, find a nice here, and with h5, the pawn storm continues. h6, white is resolute that his king is safe on e1. And then black says, okay, you spent 3 moves getting your pawn away from where it should be protecting his king, and I'll just play g6. No problem, right? No big deal. White has both sides have a lot of smarts behind this. It is a great play. First of all, to prevent h takes g7 and the requisite king takes g7, that would be bad for black. So g6 is, I think, exactly right, the right move. But black is investing a little bit more on finding an attack against white than maybe white is settled for. And with the pawn on h6, white is saying this is a long-term weakness, buddy. Like Drake, he's in it for the long haul. Ain't nobody get to business, or something like that. It's a great track. I don't know. I don't happen to recall the follow-up is. I'm in it for the long haul. Ain't nobody get to business. I think that's on either. I think that's on Six God by Drake. Anyway, this pawn on h6 is in it for the long haul. Every few tempos or moves or so, check in on the pawn on h6, and how he's doing. He has excellent coverage because this rook is hard to move out of the way. Black doesn't know it, but white's not going to castle kingside, and he has another long distance protector on c1, a bishop that could move, but and still be protecting h6. So we're feeling really good about this pawn placement, and you want to imagine pieces. Let's move it up a bunch for the sake of the notation. You want to imagine certain pieces that could fit on g7 nicely. With the pawn still there and a queen there, checkmate. That's huge. With the pawn still there and a bishop there, well, isn't this nice to have the king completely captive and possibly winning a tempo against the f8 rook, whether he's moved or not. There's a lot, just about any white piece you can think of to move them on to g7 is going to do nicely. And I picked out the two that are most likely to be there, and this poor bishop on e2 won't. He quite frankly won't. It's not part of the rules of chess for him to ever be there. But yeah, so there's a huge hole in black's camp. And I think on whole, black does have an idea with, you've spent a lot of moves and I can just move pawn to g7. That's strong, as well as some aggressively placed pieces or lines open for aggressive placement. That's also strong. We'll see how the ideas contend against each other. Bishop g4 is in keeping with black's idea of initiating an attack. And white thinks, yeah, so it wasn't the move bishop g4, but then the follow-up on this tactic, bishop takes e2, quite directly allows white to recapture on e2 with a knight, and now white is simply ahead of a full piece on move 12. So my opponent mostly didn't give up, nor did he or they resign. Those are two different things, I assure you. And white is playing to make use of this pawn while he's still there. There were thoughts of rook takes h5, queen takes h5. Oh, no, sorry. h5 is really getting beat up on that. Rook takes h5, g takes h5, queen takes h5. And my determination was yes, possibly there's some kind of forced mate that ends with the queen on g7. I would think it through in a tournament game under slow time controls, but I wasn't sure where would be the moment for this after my knight moves. So my opponent gives me a speck of initiative, a tempo of initiative, by playing rook b8. Can white successfully sack the exchange here? We're going to play this out on practice. Okay, so we're looking at rook takes h5. We're thinking black will recapture, and then after queen takes h5, there's a dual threat of a forced mate, but I'm pretty sure, yeah. White's doing very well here as well, but there's also no forced checkmate. 2 extra points of material. We already had those from picking up the bishop, and we gave one away with the exchange sacrifice. But by moving the f pawn out of the way, the g7 square is defended strongly enough against checkmating, an otherwise checkmating attack. You would definitely want to at least think about queen g4 check. And you don't. I caution against a check on g7 here, swapping queens but giving up a pawn, is then white's lead in material is now down to one pawn. White can do better than this. So I think all around I played fine. How I played. So we go back to, yeah, knight d5 is there. Therefore, I think knight d5. But here the computer sees both, so that's fine. I played knight d5, and it worked out well. I saw it as less controversial or less difficult to calculate than the tactical lines following rook takes h5, and so that also helps preserve mental resources and so on and so on. Queen d8, g4, kicking the knight, but in a strong way because that knight will be at least traded. I'm not sure if I don't think I really messed up here. I messed up in calculation, thinking at this point that I had won the knight on f6. It turns out I didn't because of queen a5 check. I said, for real? And I kicked the queen. Just to test my opponent once. The queen goes back to d8. And then I play bishop to g5. And the point here is not to force a draw by threefold repetition, but just to get that one test in before then continuing with what I would consider otherwise the best line, which is queen to d2. I don't want a draw. I could have forced one, and I don't want one with a full piece ahead. So now the queens swap. My opponent could have gathered a pawn on g4. Maybe that's not all that strong, please. Knight takes g4, and then knight to f6 check. Knight takes f6, bishop takes f6. These pawns can't move. This pawn can move, but it doesn't matter. The trap will be set on g7 with a bishop covering a very advanced pawn here, and a king whose mobility is almost completely stymied. A loss of tempo in initiative when the rook moves, has to take time to move away to probably someplace that isn't all that helpful as he's sitting at the back of his pawns. So I'd say that, yeah, no, as a player, as a chess player in a blitz game as black here, I might have gone for knight takes g5. There's another loose pawn over here. It's daring. It requires calculation. As a chess move, it doesn't work out. White will pick apart black's defenses when this knight has moved in that way. And the knight will capture back. Yeah, maybe this is off. The knight will capture back on f6 because so many reasons. Starting with knight to d7, and the black's rooks are forked. So we have this position. White's up a full piece, and I'm starting to pick off a few pawns. For the trading rooks, my rook activity is strong. It's smart here to close the position. For white rather than invite black to have a stronger rook than necessary on b2 check and attacking the a2 pawn as well. So instead we close. They don't really close the position. We're closing these 4 pawns, but that's the wise way to go. Limit the scope of the b7 knight. We do not want black's rooks to become active. If you've ever played like a really technical dry endgame against the computer on the strongest level and he has 1 rook left, you'll see how extremely frustrating it can be to play against an active rook in the endgame. The bar might show you as winning by a lot, but darn it, if he knows every skewer and trick and trap that rook does. So I had no part of that. I wanted no part of that. In keeping, I'll even offer up the d6 pawn moving to d7. You know, I was thinking just just to water down black's material by a full rook, even if it costs me a pawn. My opponent wanted more, and I think that didn't help. And then the final blunder of rook takes d7, capturing so as to stack the rooks vertically is the answer here. Yeah, we can see that rook takes d8, rook takes d8, right? This is what I would show by completing the game. But rook takes d7 isn't quite as good. So we're up a rook. We won the game. It's fun. My opponent, DJ Uvain, I thought played a strong game. Had a kind of a material blunder on, I believe, e3, somewhere around here. Lost the bishop because I could capture back with the piece that I just moved, and then sensible moves all the way to the blunder. Rook b takes d7 and white's up a full rook. White's up now 2 full rooks. Wait. No, it's black to move, so white's gonna be up 1 rook. That's it. That's it. And like I said, chess.com hosted the game, so I'm gonna let the game plus the finish versus computer play out, and then I'll be signing off for maybe the day. I don't know. Probably be on once more today. This is a great game. I really feel great about it, and I won't get all wishy-washy here, but by playing chess on Lichess and chess.com, by playing chess on chess.com and Lichess, I've regained some of my confidence, so that's a big deal too, and a special thanks therefore to these 2 wonderful chess sites. That's me not being wishy-washy. Me being not wishy-washy. Okay. Thank you for watching and listening. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Have a great night.